Hello everyone, my name is Penelope de Oliveira. I am here with my good friend Mr. Curt Noland, and today we're here to discuss his upcoming book, It Happened on the DMZ. Now I have so many questions about the writing process, specific scenes. I personally don't consider myself a big military narrative fan. I watched Full Metal Jacket, the movie. I enjoyed it, and that was pretty much the extent of any sort of military narrative I've consumed. But your book in particular was so emotionally gripping. There were several scenes that I'm not afraid to admit I cried to. I was laughing with the soldiers' banter at the antics of Pooch the dog. And there were just so many times I also tensed up. I could feel the stakes. The whole environment just completely absorbed me in. It was extremely immersive. I felt like I was not just reading about what happened to the characters in the book, I was living alongside them. And I think one of the things that truly helped me immerse myself in the environment of 1960s, recently desegregated America, politically divided, one of the things that helped me to immerse myself so well is your specific mastery of dialogue. All of the characters had their own distinct voices. I could hear them speaking in my head. They didn't feel like cardboard cutouts meant to just follow around the main character, Bert. They felt like real, tangible, full-bodied people. And the first question I wanted to actually ask you was, what helped you to write your dialogue to feel human, raw, and real?
Well, the military throws a lot of people together, soldiers at that particular time. The majority of us were called draftees. We were there because the United States was just yanking us out of jobs, high school, whatnot, to fill the ranks with the burgeoning war that was going on in Vietnam. There was no escape, basically, other than to become a draft dodger and leaving the country, go to mostly Canada is where a lot of the potential soldiers escaped to, but the majority of us that stayed, we suffered through, we hung together, we learned to support and defend and do what we were supposed to do.
Wow, so the characters in your novel, you actually fought alongside them. This is a real lived experience.
These are the real soldiers. The various times to the basic combat training that we went through, and then later the advanced infantry, and then when we were separated and sent to our various overseas duties, we were shipped out together. We spent time learning, retraining, facing perils that we really weren't prepared for a lot of times, and just sticking with each other. But these soldiers that I served with, I remember them even as today. It's been 58 years since I've had any physical contact. Fortunately, I've had some contact via the telephone, internet, and whatnot with a few of the soldiers. But the majority, being at my age, they're no longer with us.
Wow. And in relation to the previous question I asked, and you saying it's been so many years removed since those events, even though they're permanently embedded in your memory.
Yes.
Another thing that I noticed a lot while I was reading your book was how real the setting also felt. And I do feel that some authors fall into a trap of, in the beginning of their book, they info dump about their world to try and quickly get the reader immersed into the world, and it could come across a tad heavy-handed. Now that's not to say that 1960s desegregated America, that's a pretty well-known time and environment, but in your case, the way you portray that time period and also the settings, it doesn't feel like a caricature of itself, and it also doesn't feel dated. I think a hallmark of a timeless book is for readers to be able to immerse themselves in a setting without being hit over the head with, we did this and we did that. You very masterfully sandwich in the small details about 1960s America. For example, when the soldiers are on the bus and they're singing the Temptations' My Girl, and that's a very well-known song. So as I was reading that, I'm listening to the song in my mind, and I'm with the soldiers on the bus while they're in pretty good spirits. What helped you craft your setting?
Well, I want to give credit, beginning with throughout the whole writing process, I had interventions with the Holy Spirit who guided me through some of the hard parts of the writing, that I needed to get this out and that it was going to serve a purpose, hopefully for this generation, anyone who reads it, who is able to go back in time because of the way I've written it, but also through that periods of stress and danger, that same Holy Spirit was there protecting me and guiding me.
Wow. And in relation to divine intervention and the Holy Spirit, there are two instances that instantly come to mind for scenes in the book where that's evident, and Bert is also thinking about that. The first scene is the scene where Bert is coming home for Easter.
Mm-hmm.
And he's visiting his high school sweetheart's home, Veronica,
Mm-hmm.
a young black woman. And he comes home to the devastating news that Veronica's older brothers, who were also acquaintances and friends of Bert,
Yes.
has passed away.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on what happened with that, and again, tying back to the divine intervention, what happened there?
This is one of the elements that was on my mind even to this day. We were at Fort Holabird in Baltimore, Maryland. We were bused, 2 buses filled with draftees. We had just taken the oath to protect and defend the United States, and we were being shipped down to Fort Bragg for our basic training. About 20 miles north of Richmond, Virginia, the bus that I was on broke down. So both buses were sitting on the side of the highway, and it was decided that the first bus, or bus A, would continue on because we had no way to get transportation, and we just sat there for a few hours waiting to be picked up by eventually a Greyhound scenic cruiser, which took us back to Washington, D.C., and from there, those who needed to go back to Philadelphia, Baltimore, and various areas, that's what happened. So that was the first, what I would call a protection factor, that I was not on that particular bus.
Wow. So you had just narrowly evaded being sent to that battle. In tandem with the divine intervention and being protected, I also wanted to talk about the second scene where that happened, but more specifically with the question, what was the hardest scene or chapter for you personally to write, and how did you push through it?
The hardest scene would be when I was with my good drinking buddy, Rafael Lopez. We had met when we were stationed with the 2nd Infantry Division of 1st Battalion, 38th Infantry. We were on patrols on the Korean DMZ. In those days, there was just barely one single strand of wire separating North from South Korea. We were positioned on what was known as a guard post, and the night of June 3rd, 1967, we were attacked, and we were bombarded with rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns, so forth, from the North Korean commandos. And Raphael and another soldier, a Katusa, Corporal Hung, were in a bunker that I had just left. Once again, direction from the Holy Spirit, I had to go out and use the latrine. And at that moment, the bunker that I just left was bombarded, and it blew up. And Raphael and the Corporal Hung were severely wounded, and I had to go in without any thinking or whatever because of training. I went in immediately and started first aid, and the gruesome scene that my drinking buddy, my good pal, was laying with his spleen and stomach split open, and the initial first aid that I performed was horrendous, but I just did it, and that was the scene that I played time and time and time again. So,
wow. Yeah, so you had just narrowly avoided injury or death yourself.
We're talking seconds. I mean, I was slightly wounded from the repercussions of the explosions and whatnot, but not like them.
Right. Do you ever suffer from survivor's guilt from that time?
Well, initially, now we have the term PTSD. Yes, I suffered with that for quite a few years. Yes, survivor's guilt, that was always the question that one soldier would ask the other or ask himself, why me? Why them?
Mm. Wow. And it definitely sounds like you were permanently impacted by just that short time frame of just a few minutes. I wanted to ask, as a follow-up, who was the hardest character for you to write, and who was the most enjoyable?
The most enjoyable would be, once again, a fellow soldier, Bill Stevens. He was a Texan. We were housed together, living in the same quarters, serving then at what was called the Headquarters Command, and I was then an appointed driver for our Battalion XO. But Bill and I had developed the habit of routine of keeping ourselves very physically fit and ready to do whatever, even though we weren't demanded at that particular time to go through these things. So we formed a brotherhood to get through these things, and I miss Bill, and that's, easy to write about him because we were just such good buddies, and he is a Christian man also, and so I was very blessed to have him, and hopefully he's thought the same of me.
Right. Well, I'm sure he does. But in the same vein of camaraderie in the military, I wanted to ask you specifically, how did leadership in the military navigate dissent, racism, those sorts of things that could cause a squad or a battalion to crumble? It takes place in the 1960s, so post-desegregation, racism tensions are still high, and also the states were very politically divided at the time.
Yes.
So, and I'm specifically thinking about the latrine scene. I thought that was just such an incredible scene. But could you elaborate on what happened, and as well as perhaps any other examples in the book that leadership navigated any sort of dissent amongst soldiers?
Well, that particular scene was, we were about 5 or 6 days into our basic training, and once again housed together with all kinds of different soldiers, nationalities, creed and color. We had a group of 5 that came from Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia, and they had written a letter of demand to our DI, the drill instructor, that they were not going to be using the same bathroom facilities as the colored folks, the black Americans, that they were unsanitary, and that the Valdosta group, the 5 GIs, went at their own separate facilities. So the DI, I must say, he was what we know as a Mexican American, very feisty, very gritty, but he had that instant where he needed to really put things in order. He gave me the duty of trying to dissect this letter that these men had written, and I turned it around to make it sound like they were more than anxious to go ahead and do the latrine cleaning themselves, even though we were obligated to do it maybe one day a week. That I had rewritten the letter per se to the DI that they wanted to do it for 10 days. He didn't smile, he didn't shuffle but he instantly knew what I was doing and turned around and announced to the group that they were granted the permission to do exactly that. They didn't balk, they didn't cry, because they knew that they were in deep trouble.
Wow, I feel as though drill instructors, now referred to as drill sergeants, they always come up with the most creative ways to punish people. And the way that he navigated that was just simply so masterful. Now, I wanted to talk next about Burt himself and his desire to want to serve the United States. But he's strongly beholden by his patriotism. Were there moments in the book where his patriotism, was being tested, or there were blockades to him wanting to serve the United States? The first obvious conflict I'm thinking of is his condition. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, Burt, or the author, had a condition that was overlooked, suppressed during the physical induction part, where Burt had blackouts due to kind of like a little bit of amnesia, but also blackouts to put him into a position where he didn't remember things. And these were sometimes 30-second, 40-second occurrences, but some were longer than that. But this was suppressed and hidden by Burt because he wanted to serve the country as a patriot, knowing that as he came up to Boy Scouts, ROTC, that the United States needed him.
Wow. The secondary conflict that I picked up on was when Burt contemplated the saying, "one nation under God." Now, he's being drafted into the military at this point in time when there is an unsavory opinion of war by some groups in the States. His patriotism is tested several times throughout the book, from anti-war confrontations, the restaurant scene with the other soldier.
Right.
I wanted to talk about the burial chapter, and specifically where Burt is on burial detail for a soldier who had unfortunately died. Would you say that moment was a true test of Burt's conviction and patriotism?
Yes, for myself and the other soldiers, that I had actually told them that particular duty that we were offered was getting us out of a harsh treatment of a 25-mile forced march, and that if this particular duty that the DI didn't really mention initially was on Sunday, it wouldn't be too difficult or too hard. But then we found out that the particular duty was burial detail to the cemetery at Fort Bliss, and had to serve as honor guard. And just the shock of watching the wife of this soldier that was killed, that it's just dawned on all of us in that instant that that could be us.
Wow. Yeah, I remember reading that scene, and just I could feel how torn up Burt was, watching the widow crying as she watched her husband be brought home.
Yes.
And it just an incredibly moving scene. Now back to that first conflict with Burt's physical condition, physically blocking him from displaying or fulfilling his service, his time in. I wanted to talk about the Oreo scene and what happened there, the dynamic of the group, of the soldiers. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
James Dobbins and Clarence Hamilton and I, all boys from D.C., were used to being around each other as
in the shadow of mountains, Beneath the vast sky, a young soldier trembles as the days pass by. Drafted away from home to a place unknown, in the heart of the DMZ, where the seeds of fear are sown. Close friends gathered round, they share a knowing glance. In a world of uncertainty, they find a fighting chance. Echoes of the DMZ, whispers of the past, moments lost in silence, memories that last. Through the trials and the terrors and nights filled with dread, we carry each other in the words unsaid. Laughter breaks the tension, a shared stolen smile. In the trenches of heartache, they find joy for a while. On patrol through the haunted, with shadows at their heels, for every fleeting moment, it's friendship that heals. In the dark of the night, the whispers turn to songs, for the ones who never return, who remind us where we belong. Echoes of the DMZ, whispers of the past, moments lost in silence, memories that last. Through the trials and the terrors and nights filled with dread, we carry each other in the words unsaid. Comrades standing shoulder to shoulder, facing the unknown. In the chaos of battle, a family is grown. Through the fear and the fire, their bond remains strong. Together they are warriors in a world gone wrong. Times of terror linger like shadows on the ground, ghosts of fallen brothers in the silence profound. Yet within that darkness, a light shines so bright. In the laughter and memories, they transcend the night. For every lost heartbeat echoes through the years. In every shared adventure, we conquer our fears. Echoes of the DMZ, whispers of the past, moments lost in silence, memories that last. Through the trials and the terrors and nights filled with dread, we carry each other the veterans, the brave and the true. In the heart of the DMZ, their stories shine through. With courage as their compass and honor as their guide, together they will always stand side by side.